All right. Thanks for tuning in to All Things Division III Soccer with SimpleCoach and Jackie. That's my lady Jackie, and I am SimpleCoach. Very excited for today, as she is obviously, for today's episode of Simple Coach to Coach, where I have the opportunity to speak with head men's coach Roy Dunshee from Washington College. Again, what great conversation. Unfortunately, towards the end, when we started to talk about recruiting, we were having some technical issues with, which probably on me because I'm infamous for those by now, and had to cut it short. So we didn't really get to touch upon the recruiting, but he has given me permission to put links and information down in the description. So, and that's what I'm going to do. Maybe before the fall, we'll basically be able to do a follow-up, shorter follow-up, and maybe we could bring it up then and talk about recruiting. He does have some interesting perspectives on high school players and their adaptation to the college game, which I think is invaluable. So hope you enjoy. Really do appreciate the support. Want to tell you that I mean, I'm amazed by sort of the outreach I'm getting from other coaches and the positive feedback I'm getting. So really grateful and really do appreciate it. So enjoy this one. Okay. So, Coach Dunshee, I really do appreciate you taking the time to join me today. Super excited for this. One of the highlights of the season was watching your team play Montclair State, and the result. It was a fantastic display. So I'm really psyched we're going to be able to take a look at that. But again, thanks for joining today.
Sure.
Okay, so why don't we just start maybe you could just talk about your soccer/coaching journey and how you ended up at Washington College.
Well, I'm kind of old. You probably didn't notice, but I'm pretty old, so I don't know how much time we've got. I'll try to focus on the highlights. My soccer journey and life journey began in Neptune, New Jersey, where I grew up, and was at that time in particular a big soccer town, amidst a lot of other really popular soccer towns, and at a time when it wasn't really a national sport. It was really big where we grew up. I mean, we played pickup, and it was part of our culture. We had the Cosmos, we had Pele, we had all that, soccer culture growing up, and we were producing a lot of really good college players at a Neptune high school. Now, I was not one of them. I was I was not a distinguished player in high school, but I did get recruited. There was this diaspora of soccer players from New Jersey heading south during that stretch.
Yeah.
So I was caught up in that. I got recruited by several smaller schools, no Division I schools. And when I went for my recruiting visits to all these schools, I popped in on a friend of mine. He was a year older than me, Mike Musaw, who was a terrific player, and he was playing at the University of South Carolina. And they had just created a program. Mm-hmm. So he was part of their first class. So I visited him on that trip. I hadn't been recruited there, but I was just visiting my buddy. But I was, entranced by the facilities were unbelievable. The Bermuda grass and the locker rooms, everything was just at such a high level. And a couple of fortuitous things happened. I managed to get an appointment with the coach. That was Mark Burson, who was his second year at South Carolina. And he just retired last spring as the winningest coach in Division I. Wow. So I got some FaceTime with him. And I got in a pickup game. So I think Moose, my buddy, was in class or something. He said, "Look, go down to the varsity field. This guy's playing down there. You get a little run in." And when I played in that pickup game, I was fine. I hadn't been recruited by any D1 schools, but I didn't think there was anybody out there who was better than me. Now, what I didn't know was that I was playing with the club team. Right? And there's no internet, so I couldn't look up who's who. And Moose asked me how to go. I'm like, I was great. So I badgered Coach Burson into inviting me to preseason. I really had to get after him because he hadn't seen me play. But I got a couple of recommendations, and I got invited. It was really an eye opener when I got there, because the first training session, I was like, uh-oh, these are the guys I played against.
Yeah.
So that was, it was a bit of a struggle, but I had a couple things going for me. One was I was big, right? So every coach is sort of, particularly in college, okay, if this big kid can play a little bit, we'll give him a chance. And I had a really long throw-in, which was more of a novelty then than it is now.
Yeah.
So I didn't play well in preseason, but every time the ball went out of bounds, I was like, I got it. I just threw it as far as I could, even if I had no teammate in the landing area.
Yeah.
I just wanted them to see that I could do it. So that kind of got me in, gave me a spot on the team, which was thrilling. I was on the Division I team. The novelty of that wore off when I realized I was the worst player, which was a little embarrassing because I was also the biggest player. Yeah. And you don't want to be that guy. So I got my pride was stung. So I had to get to work. And I had 2 frustrating years where I didn't play. But then I had 2 really good years where I did play. And I tell you, to this day, the happiest day of my life, setting aside the birth of my son, which doesn't count, right? It's on a different level.
Yeah.
Today, Coach Burson gave me my scholarship, which was the spring of my sophomore year. And I got a fat scholarship. I got a little lucky. Some guys left the program, some money loosened up. And I got a very nice scholarship. And, when you make that call to your dad, hey, Dad, you don't have to pay for college anymore. That was the happiest day of my life.
Yeah.
But there's a strange thing, of course, in college, because we associate sports with college in this country. Just when you're getting good at soccer, you're 21, 22, it's over.
Yeah.
And I was a useful player in that I fouled people a lot, and I won head balls, and I won a lot of tackles, and I took a lot of throws, but I didn't play pretty soccer by any stretch. We had people who did that. I protected the little guys. That was my job. But I was just starting to get good. I was a multi-sport guy, but having focused for, several years on just soccer, I was just starting to get good. It was over. So I kept playing, and I played intensely and trained a lot. And the amateur leagues during that stretch were very good because the pro leagues were all falling apart.
There was no pro. There was no, you had to go indoor.
Very few opportunities professionally. And so the amateur leagues were very good. So I played at a good level for a really long time, but I was never really in the soccer business. I had other professions during that stretch. I didn't get into coaching until my late 30s, almost 40 years old, before I ever started coaching. And that was a couple things. St. Mary's High School in Annapolis was right behind my business, and I kind of got on as a volunteer assistant there. And I thought I could just waltz in, and I fancied myself a pretty good player, and I could just waltz in, and that would translate very easily to coaching. And of course it didn't. I had no idea what I was doing. But I looked across the touchline to these other coaches, and was like, those guys know something I don't know, and I want to find out. So I started going to the coaching courses. So this was the big transformative thing for me. 2 big things. One, the coaching courses, and the other was Corver coaching, which I'll get into in a second. But I loved the environment at the coaching courses. The first one I went to, I was a little cocky, D license, I think. I was like, what am I going to learn here? I've been playing the game since the 60s. Well, it turns out I learned a ton, and that just made me hungry for more. So I did all the courses through US Soccer and through the NCAA, now USC. And when I finished those courses, I was asked by both programs to be an instructor. So I did that and still do that for years. And that was really eye-opening too, because when you're an instructor and you're sitting at lunch with the other instructors, right? And there's Anson Durrance and Tony DeChico and Tony Waiters. Bob Gansler. I was Bob Gansler's roommate at a coaching course. I must have driven him crazy. I just never stopped asking questions, And Dave Sayward, who was a big mentor for me from Middlebury, Timo Lukoski, all these great coaches. So I learned that was a big part of my identity as I was deep involved in coaches education, and that really sort of colored how I went about coaching. And the other big thing was Corver coaching, which my friend Tom Riley got me involved in.
Yeah.
So he's now our women's coach at Washington College.
Oh yeah, I know Tom. I actually played with Tom. I just found out, we were emailing back and forth. He played in the same leagues as me in Mercer County Park, and Smitty's Kicks, and I mean these are legendary teams. And if you go into amateur leagues in the area,
well, yeah, a legendary player and a legendary high school coach.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. I think that's just tremendous high school coach.
So he's my best. We were club teammates in high school, and college teammates.
Yeah.
And played in men's leagues all the way through. So he got me involved in Corver coaching, which is technical development. And the real benefit of that as a coach was that it forced me to do training sessions really well. Because when I was doing that, I was training dozens of teams, but I wasn't coaching games. I was just running training sessions. I was running like 10 a week for a decade. So you really, a lot of trial and error on how to run a proper training session, how to organize it and deliver it. Different ages, different levels, different genders. It was a really, really good experience. As for college coaching, I really didn't have those aspirations because I got involved a little bit late. And most college coaches get into it as graduate assistants or an ops guy, and you work your way up the pyramid. But I had never done that. But I got an opportunity when my friend Tim Lenahan, who just retired as the coach at Northwestern, I helped him with camps for years. And he's got an amazing coach's tree. I think 18 or more former assistants went on to become head coaches under his tutelage. And so we were at the convention one year. He was in transition from one. I think Andy Fleming had been his assistant, just got the job at Xavier, and he needed a new assistant. So he's interviewing guys. And we're at the Marriott. I don't know if you've ever been to the convention when it's in Philadelphia, but there's a Marriott lobby bar, the social hub. It's a who's who in there. And Lenny always holds court in there. And I was hanging around with him, and he said, I found my guy. He did a bunch of interviews. He says, I got the guy, but he's from New Zealand, and his visa is such that he can't start work until June. Now, Lenny's a guy who likes to be Sir Alex. He likes to observe the practice, but he doesn't want to be on the field putting cones down and telling guys what to do. And this may be why so many of his assistants have gone on to be head coaches, because they learned how to coach. Yeah. And the guy who I was holding the spot for there was Neil Jones. Neil just got hired at Wisconsin as the head coach. So he ended up being a great selection for Lenahan, but he didn't have anybody to run his practices from January to June. So late at night, he goes, you should do it. I said, I live in Maryland. How might, So he flew me out every week for about 16 weeks, and I got a chance to coach at the college level. Wow. Now, it's a big jump from Severna Park High School, where I was doing really well. I had great teams, great kids, great parents. And from there to the Big Ten is a big jump. Yeah. So, that was an eye-opener. And the very first practice, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 2010. But it was 7 a.m. in Chicago in January. And it was different, cold. We were indoors, but still, just the walk there was bracing. And the players didn't know me. A couple of them had worked camp. I knew them a little bit, but they didn't know me as a coach. And I had to deliver a Big Ten level training session. Yeah. And just, I don't know if you've ever stepped into a game as a sub where the game's at a real high tempo and your heart rate's not up, and you step on it feels like it's going too fast. Yeah. Many times. Well, that's what the first 15 minutes felt like. Yeah. I don't know, it's too fast. But just like in a game, you get your heart rate up. I used to play at that speed. I can't do it anymore, but I just never coached at that speed. But I adjusted, and it's the same game. It's the same coaching points. You just don't make as many. You don't interrupt them as much, and you're a little more circumspect about your interruptions and your coaching points and so forth. Anyway, after that first practice, Lenahan said, that was really good, and you ought to be a college coach. I took that as a big confidence boost. But as a practical matter, it wasn't going to happen, because at that point, I think I was 50 and I had a family. I'm not moving. A 25-year-old will pick up and go anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah.
If you're the partner of a 25-year-old and he or she's a coach, that's part of the program. Yeah. Well, that's not what my wife signed on for. Well, I wasn't going to move my family. But I was fine. I had my Corver business, and I had a school team. About another year goes by, and Lenahan calls me and says, you're going to be hearing from Justin Serpone. And Justin was the Amherst coach. Yep. And there's another former Northwestern assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Justin's looking for an assistant coach. So Justin calls me and says, I've got a team built for a national championship, but I just lost my assistant coach. Lenny says, you'd be good at this. You want to give it a try. Of course, I was thrilled at the opportunity.
Yeah.
While we were making plans for that, the Washington College job became available. And it was actually Justin who tipped me to it. So I high marks to Justin for looking out for me.
Yeah.
I applied and I didn't get an interview.
Yeah.
So Linehan calls me, what's going on at Washington College? I said, well, I applied, I didn't get an interview. Guys, let me handle this. Later that day, I got a call from Washington College. So he, threw his weight around a little bit and he got me an interview and I got the job. So that I owe everything to him for getting me the job, but also I got to observe a really high functioning culture.
Yeah.
Because I was there in 2010. In 2011, they won the Big Ten.
Yeah.
With the fewest scholarships in the Big Ten and the most expensive school and the highest academic requirements.
The academics alone, right, make it a big hurdle. Yeah.
So he did remarkable things there, and I learned a ton from observing that kind of set up my framework to get into college coaching. And of course, the strange thing was for me, the adjustment I had to make was my expectations were I'm going in as an assistant on one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
Instead, I went in as a head coach for a team at the other end of the table.
Yeah.
So that was a lesson in humility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a long slog to get that team to where they are now.
Yeah. That's, I mean, what a story. Holy smokes. You know what? It's funny. You get, and I've been around the game, obviously, since I was 9 years old, right? And it is funny how it pulls you back somehow. And me doing this is part of that. Like, I got to get involved in the game somehow. And, what are my life realities? Well, a YouTube channel, like that's real. So why not? Hey, so let me ask you something, because you mentioned culture. I mean, based on what you learned, your experiences, how important have you made culture for your team at Washington? Like because it's one of the things I love to understand is how much of a bedrock it is, because what I have learned over these last months doing this is the better teams have a much deeper foundation in a culture than the teams that are not as good, right? So
I think you're absolutely right, but culture is not one of those things where you can just go into a program and say, have a better culture. Just like you can't go to a player and say, you need to be confident, so just be confident, right? It doesn't work like that. You have to set up an environment where confidence can flourish. And same thing with motivation. You have to set an environment. And for culture, you have to set an environment. And the best way to do that is to model good leadership. If you want your players to be good leaders, then you have to be a good leader. So I try to lead by example in everything I do. The key, of course, is in recruiting, because I can make a player better. Harder to make a person a better person if it's not there. I think we have a fantastic culture in our team right now. I'll take credit for rounding those guys up. I will not take credit for who they are. That credit belongs to their families.
Yeah.
I'll take the credit for spotting a guy who's got a high degree of, or a good balance, I would say, of confidence and humility, not too much of one or the other. A guy who's got a sense of humor, a guy who's smart, and a guy who loves to play.
Yeah.
So that's the character you need for our culture to really blossom. And for me, the culture comes down to love.
Yeah.
I want a team where they love each other.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of coaches do a lot of things that sometimes they seem hokey. They do team building exercises and all that. We don't really do much of that. But I feel like if you recruit the right kind of person, give them the game, you are an effective coach in that you're helping them get better and you're caring for them, that's what they want. Someone who's going to care for me and someone who's going to help me get to the next level and listen to me. You give them that and then stay out of their way. They're They're living in dorms together. They're eating together. We don't need to do team bonding. That's what the game's for, right?
Yeah.
It took a while to get there. It took a while to get the culture. I think we have a very high functioning culture right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was never bad when I was there. We had a little talent deficit, a big talent deficit in our conference, but the culture's always been okay. Right now, the culture's great, and I think that's one of the key reasons we had such a good year.
Success, yeah. Like I said, I think it's the bedrock for the really good teams. Like there's more of a premium. To your point, whether it's built or whether it's created, or you set the boundaries and you sort of let it flourish, whatever that formula is, the deeper that cultural connection in a team, the better they end up being, which again, you can't quantify. I wish I could, right? It would just help me. Okay, then that's how you figure out there's got to be a formula.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my big thing these days is culture. So do you have any, you sound like a coach who is, I don't want to say hands off, but you sort of let your guys sort of do and grow within their own sort of the way they would grow, right? And you're just sort of trying to guide them along. Do you have any non-negotiables for these guys? Like, do you have things that, look, if you're going to be a team, if you're going to be a part of this team, these are the, 1, 2, 3, some people I talk to, 20 things that you have to abide by?
No, not really. We don't have a lot of rules on our team. We have very few. And most of the rules we do have are enforced by the players. They come up with their own guidelines on their process, and they enforce it themselves. I would say the only rule we really have is no soda. So I think soda is poison. I have lunch with the team every day. My coaching staff, we eat, and Tom Riley does the same thing. We have this little gathering every day at lunch. And there's a little trick they sometimes play on recruits. They'll say, grab coach a Diet Coke. He loves that, right? Yeah, that doesn't happen a lot, but it's happened a few times. But apart from that, they set their own sort of standards. Now, this really became a thing over COVID because we were not on campus. So what they did, we were remote in the fall of 2020. The boys, most of them, I think 20 out of our 26 or whatever we had, 20 of them got apartments in an apartment complex off campus, and they played every day, and they were running their own process. They entered a team in a U23 league, and I wasn't even on campus. I wasn't allowed to go to campus, so I had no involvement in this. They put a team in a U23 league, and I got a text from Del Jenkins, who was our senior captain. He ran this whole thing. He just managed it all. But I got a text. They had their first game in this U23 league, and he said, "Who should I start and what formation should I use?" I said, "Buddy, I'm not involved. I can't be for NCAA reasons, but you get to be the bad guy today. You get to pick the starting 11 and see all the the disappointed faces of everybody else." But they did. They had to run their whole thing. Now they owned it. And so I had no disciplinary problems this year. They took care of their own business. We could just focus on the football. So they own their process more than they ever have, which is a really good place to be culturally. And so COVID was sort of a catalyst for them being super bought in, extreme ownership of their process and of their team. And I'm the guy they come to with a problem, and my assistant, Ryan Shira, who's fantastic, they trust us, I think. I'll give you a good cultural example of something that happened. And this happened a couple of years ago. We had a player, Evan Sabbath, who was a 3-year starter for us, and a very good center back, 6'6" center back. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute too. But he came in, we used to, on the day after a game, so we play Wednesday, on a Thursday, recovery practice. The guys who played big minutes, I would have them with a physio of some kind doing stretching and foam rolling and yoga or whatever. While the players who hadn't played much, I trained them because they have to develop. And they didn't play yesterday, or maybe they only played 20 minutes yesterday. They need a run. So I focused all my attention on that. And I had done that for years, and I thought that was pretty advanced coaching. Evan came into my office one day and said, "We don't like the recovery practice." Now, I was thrilled that he trusted me enough to come into my office and say, there's something going on that you're doing that we don't like. Okay, so there's trust there. And the reason he didn't like it is they felt the team, he thought it denigrated the players who hadn't played the day before and made them and separated them from the players who had played. We don't want to be separate. We want to be together. So God bless you, Evan. We're never doing that again. From now on, everyone will be involved in everything. So to me, what that said was that they wanted to be together and that they trusted me to tell me that. So I thought that was a good example of a high-functioning culture. Since then, there have been some other things like that where players have come and said, we'd like to do this a different way. We think we could do it a better way. Fantastic. So that says to me that we're doing some things right.
That's remarkable. Like I would have never, I mean, as you were explaining it to me, I was kind of like, yeah, that's a normal recovery. The guys who got minutes go over there and the other guys, and then I would have never thought like that was a big deal. That's remarkable.
Didn't occur to me either, but they were honest.
Credit to him, right? Yeah, credit to Evan for coming in to talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a little bit about how when you got to Washington, the program wasn't at the level it is today, which again, you're in rarefied air as far as I'm concerned, right? Just where you ended up getting to and the quality of your team. What was that like coming into that situation where, you have the pieces, you have a great school, having visited, you have a great place. What was that transition like as you're stepping into that and your first head coaching job, right? Like how big of a task did you think you had, or did you say to yourself, there's enough pieces here where I just have to rearrange them a little bit and we're off and running?
Well, I really didn't know what I was stepping into, but I was cocky,
when in doubt.
And I learned a lot of lessons. So I thought we had a great preseason my first year. I was getting to know the players. We won our first game 3-0, and I'm like, I don't know why this team hasn't been winning games. I think they won 2 or 3 games the year before I got there. Well, then the conference schedule kicked in, and I think our first conference game was against Dickinson, who were very good that year. They weren't the best team, but they were really good. Yeah. And we did not cross midfield with possession in that game, I don't think. And there was a long bus ride home with me scratching my head going, okay, this is not what I thought it was going to be. The teams are all better than us in the conference. And we won, I think, 2 conference games that first year, which is better than they had been doing. I think we only won 5 total my first year, which was, better. But for me, that was a disaster. Yeah. I was accustomed to winning.
That hurts.
So, so we said about the problem I had. I felt really confident running practices and game planning and all that, scouting. It was recruiting. I hadn't done that. I had 2 assistant coaches who were fantastic. Mayor Lewin, who is now an assistant at LaSalle, and Vinny Caltabiano. They knew about recruiting and they helped me learn it. And we were going after high academic kids who were really good footballers, but we weren't getting any of them because we didn't have a story to tell yet, because they were getting recruited by the other teams in our conference who were better than us. So we were failing on all these top players. So we had to shift gears. And I said, well, if we can't get those players, we can't get the players who are worse than them but are similar players, because we're going to lose all our games. We have to get a different kind of player. So we went big. I said, and I offended Vinny, my assistant, because he's not big. I said, I want big guys. Let's go get the biggest team we can find, and we are going to cause problems. Well, that's exactly what we did. We were huge. I mean, it was a circus show. At some, we were 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". Our midfield was 6'3", 6'3", 6'2" as 3 midfielders. We were just big at every position. And that caused a lot of problems for teams. They didn't like playing us. Now, so we scored a lot of set pieces. And when we had the ball, we could move it pretty well. They weren't donkeys. They were good players, but they weren't mobile. So we couldn't press. So when we came up against a team like Hopkins, who were great with the ball, we couldn't get the ball from them. When we came up against a team like Franklin Marshall, who were great at pressing, we couldn't have the ball against them. So that team had limitations. But that group got us to the postseason for the first time in history. And we won a postseason game, and we lost to Haverford in the semifinal of the conference in overtime, and they were the champs that year. So that year sort of put us on the map. And then what happened after that, we started to get some better players. But for a couple of years, we had a muddled team. We had some of these huge guys left over, and we had some smaller technical players, and it didn't mesh real well.
Right.
We had sort of a muddled product for a couple of years, but we were playing better football and beating some really good teams, and we were on our way. Not having 2020 hurt us, because that was a year we thought we were going to be good, because we had 11 players in that class, and they were all good. So that it hurt us a little bit, but having that year off and having that year to get ready for the next year, we bounced back from that pretty well.
Oh yeah.
That process was painful. It was 9 seasons of perseverance, which is kind of a cornerstone for our program is about perseverance. We're not. I still get ribbed by a lot of the coaches that I run into at recruiting events. They say, "Roy, what are you doing here? There's nobody here over 6'5". Why are you recruiting at this event?" But that's not really who we are anymore.
Yeah. It didn't look like that. Again, this season watching you, I would have never thought that you were a bunch of trees running out there, right? It looks like, it was such you had such a well balanced team, I thought, both physically and then technically, right? And it worked so well. You finished 10 on the D3soccer.com poll, 14 in the USC top 25 poll. How important do you think it is to get to this level, especially as you look in next year and the following years, to continue building what I think you're trying to build, right? This is the start. This year was a start for you right? It's been long time in the making, but it's not. It's just talking to you. It doesn't sound like this is a flash in the pan. No, you want to have a presence. You want to have a permanence at this level. So, yeah, how important is getting it to this point, especially as you look to bring in other players that might be interested?
Well, it is the goal to stay in this, among the best teams. And when I was getting hired, I saw their facilities. We have a beautiful stadium.
Oh my gosh.
We also have a beautiful Bermuda grass practice field. There's no reason that we can't be a great team. We just have to get the players. I was confident in my coaching ability, but if we could get the players, we could be a nationally prominent team. But as I said, it took a long time to get there. Now that we're there, we have every intention of staying there.
Yeah.
I think in years past, when I heard guys say things like, we're going to win, we're going to compete for the conference this year, in the back of my mind, I knew that was bravado. We weren't really qualified to expect that. This year, the guys all expected it. They felt like we could do it. Now that having done it in a year when, we sent 5 teams to the NCAA tournament out of the conference, and we won the conference tournament. I think now the players are expecting that we're going to be there from here on in. That's a whole different set of expectations now.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be okay next year. We're graduating a lot of goals. James Strine and Greg Adams, 10 goals each and 6 assists each. Yeah. It's a lot of goals.
Yeah.
Well, Jenkins chipped in 3 goals, I think. That's a lot of goals to replace. But I think we have the people to do it. I think we should expect to be good again next year.
Yeah. That's the tricky part, but yeah. So let's switch to the season, if that's okay. So there's no. I am asking everybody this because it's so unprecedented, right? There's no 2020, and I've yet to find anybody who spoke about their spring season that they ended up having as being some great thing. It was just like, hey, at least we got to play. Knowing the players that you had, and you're sort of coming out of this, the playing with big guys. What were your expectations, or what was your thinking of where you thought this team could get to this year? And again, knowing you have a 2-year gap between when you really played and yeah, so I'd be curious to that.
I thought we were going to be good. I didn't broadcast that. I didn't, pound my chest about it, but I could see how these guys were developing, and I could see the bonds that were developing over COVID. We would have meetings like this, and then in the spring of 2021, when we were together and everybody was super fit and focused, and I was observing them at practice, pinging the ball around. I'm like, we've never really had players at this level before.
Yeah.
I think we're going to win some things. The real confidence that I developed was in our preseason this year in August. And I told the team this, that the way they were interacting with each other, the way they were pushing each other, demanding effort at every event at training. And if we did a rondo or something that wasn't high tempo, the captains would get after everybody. Hey, look, we've got to get after this right now. Let's go. And then off the field, how relaxed everybody was with each other. I could feel some special energy in the group. That sounds weird, but I told them that in I don't know, it was like day 4 of preseason. I said, there's something happening here, fellas. I've been around a long time. There's something special in this team. So we can ride this a long way. So I thought we were going to be good. We had a couple bumps along the way. Certainly the first Montclair game was an eye-opener. But it hardened us. It made us better.
Yeah. Well, I think too, especially as you're going through that ride, you need those bumps in a season. You can't have a perfect season because it just never happens that way. And it's then how do you deal with those bumps, right? Montclair, okay, what do you do to come out of that? Like, okay, we didn't play the game we wanted to. How do we recover from that? I think that's a big part of how you get to that next level, is dealing with that sort of stuff. So is it fair to say that let me rephrase that. All right. So as a coach, there's always those moments in the at some point in a season where it becomes more than like words, right? So you're talking to your team in preseason, you're saying there's something special going on here. When did that become a reality for you in a season? Was it right? I know some teams, some of the coaches I've talked to have said, "Oh, I remember this game when we played and we beat this team. We knew, or I knew, in the dark recesses of my mind, like, man, this is really a special group." Does that make sense?
Yes, and that certainly happened for us. And it was the game against Franklin Marshall this year. Yeah. It was our first conference game, and we beat them 2-0, and we had never beaten them, not since I've been there, and for a long time before that. The best we ever did against them was the year we made it to the postseason. We tied them. That was the best result we'd ever gotten. They were the team that we couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
And we played very well against them. And they're a juggernaut. They're so difficult to deal with. Yeah. And so well organized and athletic and up for it. I've seen them play a lot. I've never seen that team phone it in, man. Yeah. They're so good. And we beat them, and it was 2-0. It was a solid win. And so it was after that game that we said, okay, we've got evidence now that is consistent with my thinking, that we can be pretty good.
Yeah. That's a great game too, to come out with that feeling, right? It's not like you postponed it, like, oh, we played some, no, it's you picked a real, as much. And I'm actually talking to Dan Wagner next week as doing one of these, because I'm not a fan. Not that I'm not a fan of them. I just don't like the way they play. I don't understand how they play. It doesn't make sense to me. But I totally acknowledge they are probably the most difficult team to play against, because they are so that level of intensity. So to win a game against them, I could see why you would be like, oh my gosh, this is the year. This is the team. This is a team that we have.
Well, for years, what I've been saying is Wagner knows something. They've got some special sauce. They know how to win Division III.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were, I think that first game, I think they were number 2 when we played.
Yeah, yeah.
So to get that result against a team that we know they know how to win, and we were able to beat them, that was it was a big signpost for us. Okay, we can be really good.
Yeah. It's their soccer that I can't figure out. But yes, not to take anything away from them, I could easily see them being in the top 10. Like that's not an argument that I would struggle making, like, because they are so, whatever they're doing, that secret sauce is so effective.
Yeah.
It is. That's one of the remarkable things. It's like, oh my gosh, for as much as I can't watch it, they do it so well. It drives me nuts.
I can't wait to see that interview.
I'll say this publicly. I'm actually nervous. Like, I'm nervous. I wrote some things like he saw, and, I called it Neanderthal ball and chaos ball, and because I don't understand it. And he reached out really kindly and sent me an email, and we got to talk. He sent me video, so I'm going to watch video this weekend. But yeah, I'm nervous for that one.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
You won't have any problem.
It's funny. I'm not a journalist. I'm not an interview guy.
You are now.
I'm like, oh my God, he's going to yell at me. Oh, Lord. All right. So this is the part where I really want to talk about. So your game against Montclair in the NCAAs, I think it was one of the top 5 games. You mentioned you saw the video I made of the top 5 games, and my judgment for what my top 5 games are the ones that I had liked for whatever reason. There's no rhyme or reason, but to me, it was a master class for both teams of how to play a soccer game with 2 styles that are completely different, and how do you break each other down. And I thought for 3/4 of the game, no, we'll get into that. But so in the first half, I'm just going to call it simply rope-a-dope, because it struck me that in the first half, you basically ceded everything to Montclair, or at least it looked like that. Again, I'm watching from video, right? So I don't know what the instructions are. It looked like you were like, yep, you take it, you attack, but you weren't going to concede anything. And I think you made it extremely difficult. In the second half, it looked like a completely different team that came out, because you flipped the script on Montclair, and Montclair kept trying to do the same thing. And this time you decided to keep the ball and knock it around, move it, get forward quick, and sort of exploit the places where they were clearing out because they were trying to press so much to get a goal. I got to ask, was that by design, or was I just watching a normal ebb and flow of a game? Because to me, I was like, you don't see this sort of change, voluntary change, I'll say, between halves, especially at Division III.
I'd love to be able to say that it was tactical genius to let Montclair have the ball, but we didn't want Montclair to have the ball.
Yeah.
There was something that happened, and I'll tell you, because I've got permission to tell you from the player. We had a playwright food poisoning. James Strine, who was our top scorer over 4 years, he's our only all-region player. He's our playmaker, and he didn't sleep the night before. The day of the game, we're trying to get electrolytes in him and anything we can do to kickstart him. And so he tried to pull a Michael Jordan and play through it. And he's warming up. It's like, I can go. Well, when your best player says he can go, you put him on the field.
Right.
And he tried. And James is I always refer to him as a sneaky defender, because he'll play possum. He'll look disinterested, and then he jumps and snatches the ball from you. But he couldn't do that. He looked disinterested, and then he couldn't go press the ball. So he's a left-footed right winger for us. But he doesn't really live on the touchline. He wanders in the half spaces. He finds the game. He's a set piece expert. He's a final ball expert. and he can switch the ball from our right flank to our left flank, where we had Eric Guads, who was really, really coming into his own at that point. We couldn't get so James was out there starting, and it was like we were defending a man down. This is why Montclair had so much of the ball.
Yeah.
So we had to cover for James, and our thinking was, well, give him a few minutes to find the game. Maybe his adrenaline will kick in, and even if he can't run, he's got that special
something. Yeah.
He can cut the game open with one pass.
Yeah.
But he was struggling. He couldn't get on the ball. When he did, he was dispossessed a few times, which hardly ever happens to him. So after 20 minutes, we pulled the plug and said, "You've run your race, buddy." It was brave. It was so brave. But you need to go into the locker room and warm up and get a blanket on you. And we brought Harrison Malone in there. Now, Harrison had started pretty much all our games, but he was coming back from a concussion. That was why he didn't start this particular game. And the game changed in the second half of the first half.
Yeah, yeah.
Harrison came on. We started generating more going forward. We were able to press a little bit. Now, under normal circumstances, in other words, had we not played the day before a really tough opponent, St. Louis, a really good team, we would have pressed more. But, can we press for 90 minutes against a team that good when we played the day before? Probably not. So we didn't tell our players to play in a low block for the whole first half. Okay, we're forced to.
Yeah.
They were trained in that. They know how to play in a low block. It's something that Ryan Shearer, my assistant, had worked with them many times. So they performed the way they needed to perform to survive.
Yeah.
We could sort some things out at halftime. We came out with some slightly different personnel in the second half. I did something a little unpredictable. We lost another forward, Cole Gifford, who's our number 10. He had a groin problem and couldn't continue in the second half. So now we're down 2 of our starters up top. And I should say that we had a remarkably healthy team this year. We came into the NCAAs at the roster of 29. All 29 were available.
Yeah.
So I give a lot of credit to Coach Shearer for that, and to our medical staff for that, for being smart about how we get our team fit but don't overwork them and that sort of thing. So, but in that game we had 2 of our top guys out. So we trusted our bench. We Max Greenfeld, who is a left back, put a shift in at right wing because he's got a beautiful left foot and a really good range of passing. We thought he could make that ball to Eric Guads. He ended up not doing that, but he played really well anyway. Mm-hmm. And Chris Pinto put a shift in over there. A couple other guys gave us help playing James's position. And we knew that James, without James, we still had Greg Adams, who's a fantastic forward, and Eric Guads, who was absolutely on fire. So we don't need much for those guys to score a goal. Yeah. If we can get them the ball facing the goal, if we can get them some looks, we felt like we could score, as long as we held our structure defensively and didn't get stretched or chase unnecessarily, stay compact, and don't let the game get away from us. So I'll take some credit and give a lot of credit to Ryan for having the team organized, but we certainly didn't plan on just letting I think it would be foolhardy to let a team that good have that much of the ball, because Lukovic and Crawford each nearly scored in the first half. They had good looks.
Yeah. Those 2 players. I say I don't want them to leave, but I always like, why aren't you Division I somewhere? As I think they're both that quality, that level quality.
I agree. And we knew about them. We didn't man mark them or anything, but everybody was on high alert. Whenever they were on the ball, they still managed to get some good looks. And we rode a little bit of luck in that game and had some very good goalkeeping and some defensive stops.
Yeah, your goalkeeper was on point. Like, he first half and second half, I mean, he came up with some saves that I think you could just sense, like, it just boosted confidence. He would make a save and everybody sort of what happens in a game. You're like, oh, don't score. And he comes up with a save. And it's not only like, oh, I feel better, but you're like, yeah, that's awesome. He's playing on. And I thought that was really important.
Anthony Pinto, and he's a sophomore. So we have very high expectations for Anthony going forward too. He really managed the game very well all through the postseason. He was terrific.
Something you said that I appreciate, because I don't think it's something that I mean, I speak in generalities, but I think a lot of coaches forget, and you just talked about doing a lot of unnecessary chasing, and I think because of this notion that you want to press and you want to go after the ball, that there's a lot of extra. I think it's a misunderstanding of what pressing, the idea of pressing in soccer is, and so as a result, you have guys who are running to run, and nobody thinks about what that does to your block or your formation. That one guy stepping up high because he thinks he has to press, and he's supposed to be defending. You just opened up a gaping hole to deliver a ball, and then that ball comes across, and that's how teams get beaten. So that chasing unnecessarily is I'm my new favorite team. Like I'm just gonna say that. All right, Trine's already my new favorite team, but
We'll take it.
So own that, by the way, in the future. When CNN or when Sports Center calls you up to do an interview, say, "Yeah, I planned it. I let Montclair keep the ball." But it was, I mean, I'm assuming you watched the game. Like there is a change, and it's just really. And I think I did notice in the first half how you started to sort of come out and step out, and Montclair sort of struggled. I was struck by how one-dimensional they seemed to be trying to get at you, and I thought what ended up playing into your hands was that I expected something to change for them in the second half, and I thought they were just trying to do the same thing over and over, and I thought that was where you guys just it was masterclass. I was really impressed.
Well, thank you.
So how you're playing? It's like 70th minute. And Greg Adams scores that bang. I mean, it's not only a banger, but the two things that I thought was I don't know if it was, again, intentional or not intentional, but it totally looks like you took advantage of Montclair falling asleep on a throw-in that really shouldn't have been. It's a throw-in. I never think throw-ins will lead to anything. But then his ability to get that ball under control, turn his defender, and take the touch. I mean, that was awesome. But that's just the technical side. But so how important was that first goal for making you think like this is a great spot to be in, and what it did for your guys?
Well, we know that Eric and Greg and James, when he's healthy, don't need a lot to score a goal. They just need a little look. I didn't think it would come off a throw-in, but I think on that particular play, Emmanuel Coadio was taking the throw-in. Yeah. And we had Ben Strine, James' younger brother, who was very tall and excellent in the air. Mm-hmm. He was playing as our 10, and he had joined Eric Wads over on the touchline to be in the sort of the landing zone for the throw-in. And I think that drew out their right center back. And when Emmanuel spotted that, and saw Greg was one-on-one at the top of the box. So it was really heady play from EK to see that Greg had an opportunity there. It's certainly nothing we ever practiced or anything like that. It was improvised, and Greg was, that was just a beautiful piece of skill and a great goal. And boy, did that fill us with energy and enthusiasm. And when you've got a team that really believes, okay, now we're really, you think we were defending before? Now we're really defending. And we got a little more comfortable with the ball. So I think Montclair started taking more risks. They got a little bit more stretched, and there was a little bit more space to play. So I think there were times we could have been more composed and kept the ball a little better. But we were risk averse. Guys didn't want to make mistakes. They had that holding midfielder, Altamirano, I think.
Yeah. Oh, he's another one.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we couldn't play in that space. No. We're a team that likes, when we are at our best, we have possession in your half, and we keep it there. And we never could find a way to maintain tempo and maintain possession in their end because we couldn't go side to side. Yeah. Because he's in the middle. He's in the way. That's why I wanted James to be able to play over him. Anytime we went anywhere near zone 14 or anywhere in the zone where he was setting up, he broke everything up. Yeah, I thought he was fantastic and physical too and intimidating. So he really hurt us. And the other thing we were very concerned with, their right center back, Chesney, has got a great range of passing. Mm-hmm. So if you have a half-baked press and you're stretched out and he gets on the ball and has time and space, it'd kill you. So that's why sometimes we didn't press. We're like, well, you can play long, but you're going to play into a crowd here. But okay, so Greg gets that goal. Now we're a little bit more confident, a little more comfortable in the game, but they're throwing the kitchen sink at us. I mean, they're coming at us with everything. And this is where Anthony Pinto really had to step up. But I rewatched that phase recently, and I was very proud of how we maintained our defensive shape. Yeah. You know, because they're really good at moving the ball. When they moved it, we shifted. We always had, you know, it was just basic, fundamental defensive shape. There was always someone pressing the ball quickly. We closed down quickly, and we had numbers behind the ball. So they had to find another way through. Yeah. We shifted, closed down quickly, keep numbers behind the ball. And they, I think, got a little frustrated and started pressing a little for the goal, and they came out of the way they would prefer to play because they were starting to get a little impatient. Yeah. And that left a little space for us. And that's how I think we were able to get that second goal.
Second one. Oh, absolutely. I think the second one was the result of that, where they almost, you could just sort of sense and see them where they just didn't feel comfortable about how they were getting forward anymore. And they were just trying whatever they could do. And you could see their frustration too. And I think just being pulled apart, trying these different things that aren't necessarily game plans is what led to the second. And I will say, and I think this is why the first half I kept saying, oh, it looked like it was intentional, like you were purposely your defensive posture was, I mean, flawless. Like there was, first of all, there were a couple times, but they never got behind you. If they did, they were long balls into the corners that you could relatively easily recover from. But then I thought probably the credit to the guys in the center, Lukovic never got the ball. Like, and I watched them play. I think it was RPI or someone, and it was every time the ball went forward, Lukovic was there, got it. He could have been anywhere. And there were stretches where it was like there was just no way he was going to get the ball. And if he did, he was immediately hammered by 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. Like it was really, really, really amazing to watch.
Well, I'll tell you, he had the ball more than I would have preferred. Yeah. I didn't want to touch it the whole day. Yeah. He's a killer. I mean, he scored a goal against us in the early part of the season, a set piece that was of the highest quality. Yeah. So we knew, I mean, of course we knew who he was, but I would give big credit to our twin bulldogs in the middle, Ben Horgan and Jackson Sopa. Yeah. Double pivots in the middle who really did a great job of closing down everything in their space. And those two guys work really well together. Yeah. They're roommates. Yeah. They're really, really good friends. They look after each other and they give nothing away. They're two guys who are super responsible and love defending. And that's who I want as my holding midfielder.
So that's a great segue, because I thought your midfield in possession, defensively, but in possession was also outstanding in that game. And I'd say in that game, if I were to say, okay, who was probably the best midfield unit that I had seen, I would put you guys way up there in that discussion, because there was such a comfort level between all of them, right? Like they understood where to go, who had to stay, and they really understood where they were moving. Obviously, you mentioned the defensive side, but how important were they for in transition? So you're defending, you win the ball, and how good were they at getting you forward quickly when they did receive the ball?
Pretty good at that. You know, they're both high accuracy passers. They very rarely give the ball away. And the other guy who's usually in the middle is Harrison Malone too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always those three and Cole Gifford. So we have three midfield positions shared by four guys: Cole, Harrison Malone, Jackson Sopa, and Ben Horgan, and they're slightly interchangeable. Harrison and Cole a little bit more attack oriented. Jackson and Ben a little bit more defense oriented, but they're all excellent passers,
Mm-hmm.
and they work really well together. So, our forwards got a lot of acclaim this year because they scored a bunch of goals and they got a lot of postseason accolades. Our backs and our goalkeeper got a fair amount of acclaim late because we went through I think we did the semifinal against Franklin and Marshall, the final against Gettysburg, then St. Lawrence, then Montclair without conceding a goal. So the defense and our goalkeeper got a lot of props. But for me, the midfield went a little bit unrecognized. And I'm glad you recognized their quality because they were really the engine the whole year.
Right.
They're so fit and so up for it every game. And it's super high soccer IQs too.
Yeah.
So it was hard for other teams to play through our midfield this year. They scrapped and they won a lot of second balls. We're small in there. We don't win a lot of head balls in there, but
yeah.
we got a lot of second
It
balls.
is true. You're on the ends, right? Your big guys are on your end. So your forward line and your back line, you got what you got. But it's your midfield that doesn't have that sort of physical imposing presence. They're just really good with the ball.
Yep. And
that's interesting you said that because I mean, this is part of my obsessive compulsive part of my personality that I started watching a lot of Division III soccer counting passes because I like wondering, does passing matter in Division III soccer for a whole host of reasons that I won't mention publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to two conclusions. The teams that have midfielders who might not be the most physical, but have the ability to connect and keep the ball moving and have that high accuracy, do infinitely better than the guys that don't have a midfield like that, which leads me to the second theory that I think a lot of, again, generalizing, a lot of coaches out there, I think, confuse their midfield for the second line of attack. So they have their forwards who are pure forwards, and then they have a midfield that they think should be forwards as well. And so they forget the whole idea about, okay, how do you craft an attack and how do you move the ball? So watching that, especially Jackson Sopa and Ben Horgan, who as a pair, those two, I would say, were probably the best in the country as a twosome in the middle there, defending. And again, sort of how they move the ball. Because when you did, especially in the second half, and I hadn't seen and I watched a bunch of Montclair games. They didn't know how to get the ball from them, right? Because they were so intelligent with it. Just when they thought, okay, I'll press them because I think they're going to go out wide, they were smart enough to be like, no, I'm just going to drop it back. Or they would make that, hey, I'm just going to do the safe pass. And it's to me, it's a very unrecognized, unnoticed, unthought of thing with coaches. Again, generalizing, but yeah. So, okay. So you beat Montclair. You're, like I mentioned to you earlier, you're now Sweet 16. That's rarefied air as far as I'm concerned, right? Like that to me, just to get to that level, well, getting to the NCAAs, right? Just regardless of how you get there is a successful season. But now you're in the Sweet 16, rarefied air, going up against Tufts. Before you face Tufts, so you beat Montclair, what's your confidence level like at that point?
Well, let's not skip over that St. Lawrence.
Oh, yeah. St. Lawrence, yeah.
Because that was a very tough opponent.
Yeah.
And I thought we played particularly well in that game. We moved the ball really well. They played beautiful football. When I watch video of them, I'm like, boy, they pass. The team that they reminded me of most from our conference was Hopkins, because they're a team that really play a possession style. But because we are accustomed to playing against teams like that, because we have to prepare for Hopkins every year, I thought we did very well against them. So between that performance, which was 2-0, and the Montclair 2-0, the boys were saying, why not us? They've been saying that for a while. Why not us?
Yeah.
There's no reason we can't be here. Just because we haven't done it in the past, why not us? So that was the chant. That's going to go on the T-shirt eventually, I think. But we had a pretty decent level of confidence going into Tufts. We weren't afraid of them.
Mhm.
But we had every reason to be. They're an enormously physical team.
Yeah.
And we had never played a NESCAC team, which is a really physical conference. So that was our big concern. We know they had good players, but what we thought made them different was the power they had. Their center backs were incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Their center midfielder was a colossus.
Yeah. Calvin Arrow is that just 6-foot lot. Just
he took up so much space and good on the ball.
Yeah.
So it was the physicality that gave us concern. But we thought we could play with, we thought we could build out against them. We thought we could play through midfield against them and create some chances. And we started slow, but we weren't afraid to build out. So we weren't just whacking the ball down the field. We were making them defend us. Now, we didn't have a lot of success playing through the midfield. That was very difficult to do against them. But we did force them to work to get the ball from us. We didn't concede it easily. And we thought if we played long, we're not winning that first ball anyway.
No, yeah.
So let's have our confidence that we can build through this and generate some attacks that way. So we did okay with that. I think it was 0-0 at halftime. They got a nice goal in the second half, and we answered it. Within 5 minutes, we had scored. And I think that shocked them a little bit, because I believe up until that point, they'd only conceded like 7 goals all year.
Yeah. They were remarkable defensively, like as in a season.
They conceded 5.
Yeah.
I think that was a crazy game against Connecticut College. But up until then, they were so rock solid in the back. But we knew we could score goals. So the only team that shut us out this year was Hopkins, and that was a really close game. It was 1-0. They scored a spectacular goal, and it was an even game. I mean, they were better. They deserved to win, but that's the only team we didn't score on. So we figured we could score. We had the horses to get the goal. To answer their goal so quickly, I think put them on their heels, and the momentum shifted a little to us in that game, and we really started to generate some things. Eric Guad's broke away. He broken away just the way he did against Gettysburg and against Montclair. He was running a goal and he got taken out, which was a smart foul by Tufts. We nearly scored on the free kick. James Strang came very close. We had another moment where it was a strange play in the box where one of their players fell on the ball and was kind of rolling around on the ball while a crowd of people hacking away at him. And I was hoping that we would get a handball out of that. I thought he rolled over, but we ended up with an indirect dangerous play of kick, which we almost scored on from about 14 yards. So we were knocking on the door. And then, of course, we go to overtime, and they scored on. If anyone from Tufts is watching, I'll say, I'm sure it was a shot. It looked a bit like a cross to me. The wind got under it a little bit, and it squeezed our goalkeeper. And we thought it was kind of a bummer of a way to go out, that it seemed like it wasn't an intentional shot. It was, but, I think what it says about us is that we could play with they were number 1 at the time.
Yeah.
We gave them a hell of a game.
I thought you gave them a game. Yeah. So first of all, let me just mention St. Lawrence has a kid who I think is absolutely outstanding. Marvin Sabanda, I think is his name. Yeah. I could see him being a player of the year. Like I think he's probably one of the best and he's a sophomore, junior? I can't remember. I spoke with Coach Desatel from Tufts yesterday, and he had nothing but praise for you guys. And he actually thought that he considered it lucky to win the game. And his quote was, he thought that you outplayed them in stretches of the game. Like, that's how. And I totally agree. And when you go up against Tufts and your guys go toe to toe into OT, even though it's a loss, you come out of that being like, yeah, we're there. We're at that level. And then I did ask, we did talk about that goal. And
Wait, what I'll have to say about it.
Yeah. He mentioned when he finally got to Matty Cano, I think is who scored it. He said to him, he's like, was that a shot or was that a shot? He asked, and the Matty Cano said, yeah, coach, no way. Like, it was so. It was a crock, and I laughed, and because his response was, man, you got to own it. From now on, you shot it.
Okay, then I'll say to Matty Cano, if he's out there, take it, because we scored a goal several years ago when we played Dickinson in the Centennial Conference tournament, and we beat them 1-0, and that was the goal. Cole Strong, our left back, played a cross in, hit it wrong, deceived the goalkeeper, and that was the only goal in the game. So, it goes around, comes around. So I told Cole, call it a shot. And so, Matty, go ahead, call it a shot. Fine.
I'm okay with that. Like, I'm anytime, even when I was a goalkeeper, I always used to say, man, if you're going to score that goal, however you put it in that corner, man, own it, take it. You did it on purpose. All right. Great. So
and it counts for.
Yeah, it counts in the record books ultimately, right? That's all that matters. All right, so I just, because it's another accolade for you all, Region 5 Staff of the Year. How does that? What do you think that's a? I mean, I got to believe that you feel that that's a recognition for the years, the 10 years you've put into getting to this spot, no? And your staff, right?
For me, it's the staff. I'm glad they call it the Staff of the Year, because I'll put my staff up against anybody. I know there's better head coaches out there than me. I don't know that there's a staff as strong as ours. And that starts with Ryan Shearer, who is a proper coach, and he does a lot of the tactical coaching with the team. He's the first assistant coach I've ever had who I allow to run 11-a-side training sessions, because he's so sharp and so good at his job. We've got Jeff Reinhold and James Bedrock working with our goalkeepers, and we have Dr. B, Tom Bowman, who's an old hand at the game, and he's a veterinarian, and he's our granddad, and he's at all the games, and we love him too. And so there's a like a family atmosphere with the coaches, and there's a quality in what my assistant coaches bring to practice every day. That means I don't have to sweat about what's going to happen at practice. I know our practices are going to be sharp every time. And the players trust Ryan in particular, because he does a lot of the tactics. The players really trust his word. So when they come to the sideline and they go, do you think I should be stepping there, or should I drop off in that situation? A lot of times they'll ask me, and I'll look at Ryan and I'll go, well, what do you think? Because I know that he's going to give them a great answer. And if I say something first, this is something I've done for a long time. If I speak first, then the assistant coach is reluctant to speak because he doesn't want to contradict me. So I allow the assistant coach to speak first a lot of the times, and confidently. So of course, it's nice to be recognized by peers for having done a good job, but that is most certainly a staff award, and rightly, because I was so pleased with my staff this year.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so because you're back at it, right? Like, that's great. You had a great year, awards, all of it. And now for next year, what kind of concerns do you have going into next year? Like, complacency or just sort of those things in the back of your mind that you're like, man, I just hope that we don't think we're all that and that we still get back to work?
Hubris is always punished. So we're going to avoid that at every cost. I mean, we are not going to get cocky. We'll be confident, but not cocky. What I'm worried about, frankly, is that we have more good players than we've ever had. Mm-hmm. Finding the right balance there. And, one of Alex Ferguson, who I'm a Manchester United fan, tough times for us right now. We had a pretty good run under Sir Alex.
I'm just gonna leave that there. 2011. I'm sorry.
Okay. But one of the things that I heard him say ages ago that has always stuck with me is that for a championship team, you need to keep 11 players happy. Those are the 11 who are not playing. Because the joy is there for the guys on the field. So for us next year, because we're returning so many good players, and we've got so many players now who are developing and really showing promise, keeping a balance where guys are getting a chance that they've earned, but we're keeping a consistent product on the field from game to game. That's going to be tricky because I know now that we have some very good players who are not going to get big minutes next year because there aren't as many minutes to go around. So we're deep. We're going to flex our bench next year. We flexed our bench against in the tournament against St. Lawrence. We were up 2 goals. The last 20 minutes, we subbed almost everybody except I think one center back and our goalkeeper. Everyone else had been subbed off. So we have confidence in our bench. So my worry for next year is finding the right balance for the whole squad so that everyone's developing and everyone who's earned it is getting a chance to contribute in the games. That's going to be tricky because we have a really good recruiting class coming in too. And we have guys who are sophomores and freshmen right now who have earned the opportunity to play. But there are juniors and seniors who are really good. So that's going to be tricky. And but I'm not worried about keeping everyone humble. It's a humble group.